What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning into the show. My name is Shane Larson. Today's interview is going to be a really, really cool one. We get to talk to a former Division I offensive lineman. He played for Boise State. I know him now in my current job in my professional career, and we're going to talk to him about some of his experiences playing Division I football, the grind, the work that you got to put in, the lessons that he learned, and how that translates over to his career nowadays, right? But the other part of his story that I find super cool is his transformation physically after his playing days were over. Naturally, as an offensive lineman, you're going to be a little bit bigger sized. And after he finished his playing career, he was able to transform his body, lose a ton of weight, and now he's into long distance running and the hybrid athlete style of training, which is lifting and running and lifting and running. And we'll talk to him about that and what his goals and aspirations are on that front as well. It's a really cool interview, some stuff that I really hope that aspiring athletes, those who want to play at the next level, parents and coaches all take notes on. Please share this with any of those types of people because you're going to learn a ton from him. Not everybody gets an opportunity to play at the Division I level, and you're going to learn what it takes to actually be there and keep showing up every single day. Really stoked to have this one presented to you guys today. So remember, this is the Game Time Guru. So, what time is it? Game time! This is the Game Time Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's up, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Game Time Guru podcast. Excited to be here with you guys today. Episode 376 of the podcast. This is the 376th episode. We're almost 8 years running into the show. I want to say thank you. Every episode I do this, but I want to say thank you to anyone who's new to the podcast. Maybe this is your first time listening because you might know our guest. Thanks for joining. Thanks for tuning in. I just encourage you guys. I'd ask that you consider subscribing to the podcast. It's free. Hit the subscribe button on whichever platform that you're listening on. For those who haven't been here with me from the beginning, the show has been downloaded in 182 countries, all 50 states, but I am building out my YouTube platform. So all of my audio listeners, that's my established listener base, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and so forth. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, I'd ask that you consider hitting me with a follow on YouTube. That's a relatively small platform for me, and I'm trying to build that out. So it's only been about the last 2 years that I've actually really focused on this, in the last 12 months that I've really put a focus on it. So for the video side, so please hit me with a follow. If you'd like to hear some of the other interviews and watch some of the other interviews that we've done, we'll be coming out with them every single week. So as you guys heard in the introduction, super awesome opportunity for me to chat with a former college football player who is now kind of in a similar world that I'm into, with some interest that I have, which is long distance running and just transforming his body and just being healthy. And then we're going to talk about his faith a little bit as well, and then just kind of what he's doing outside of the sports world now and how that's transferred over to his career. So welcoming onto the show is former Boise State lineman Dalton Lins. Dalton, thanks for joining the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Shane. I appreciate it.
Heck yeah, man. So I got to officially meet you at a work event in Indiana. It's funny because we're both here in the Treasure Valley, both work for the same company currently. And I met you in Indiana for a work event. So I got to chat with you over there for a little bit. Super excited to have you on here. I knew who you were prior to that, of course, because I'm a Boise State alum. I've been in the area my whole entire life. Former season ticket holder. So I've been around the game. So I knew who you were, but never actually got to meet you. So I want to talk to you about your football experience, Dalton, but let's rewind the clock. Before I know I introduced you as a former Boise State football player, but this goes way back. Okay. Like, I want to talk to you as a kid, where you're from, what your background is, and like how you got into football in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm actually from Lahaina, Maui. So I'm from Hawaii originally. And then I came out here in 2018. So I came out just for Boise State. It was honestly the best offer. I was actually a preferred walk-on. So walked on to Boise State. But yeah, I got to shout out Hawaii, Lahaina. That's my hometown. Obviously, super sad what happened there. Luckily my family all left in 2020. So no family back there, but I had a lot of friends and, people affected by the fires out there. But yeah, I mean, that's a great community. I miss it a lot, but I do love Idaho and being in Boise now. And, Boise is just a great place to be, but got to stay true to my roots in Maui.
So growing up in Hawaii, yeah, shout out to the people out there. That's devastating. I don't think I actually pieced
Mhm.
that together until just now. And when you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, holy cow.
Mhm.
Super sad. But
Yeah,
you
super
know,
sad. It was cool. I got to see like all my old coach, like so my Lahaina Luna football team. That's the team I played for. So that was all my coaches were at the Super Bowl and got to do the coin toss, and like all the kids that did the coin toss over there were all in middle school when I was in high school. So it was kind of cool seeing them do that. Obviously, super unfortunate circumstances why, but at least Lahaina's getting recognized, and they just started rebuilding. But yeah, obviously, super sad. Haven't been back since I graduated college, actually, so 2022. So I haven't been back since after the fires happened.
oh wow. I do remember that. So I mean Max Holloway's from out there, but not specifically from Lahaina, I don't believe, but he's out there, and I thought he was
Hmm.
on the same island. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on that, but yeah, I remember him chatting about it in the UFC, talking about the
Yeah.
devastation there, man. That's brutal. But I do want to actually pick your brain on like growing up in Hawaii. I've actually talked to a couple different people on the show, like former Boise State Bronco Kamale Correa. Casey was on my show chatting
Hmm.
about his experiences. And anybody I've talked to, I got a buddy of mine that lives out in Hawaii now, two of them actually, out there. They're on Oahu, so they're out there doing their thing. Um, it's a different culture out there, man. I just want to talk. I want to pick your brain. Like it's a culture that like breeds football players. It feels like, or it just breeds toughness. So talk to me about what it was like growing up out there, I guess.
Yeah, it's a totally different culture than out here for sure. Totally different way of life. And honestly, it's just like it's very different. Just being because I'm Holly kid, I'm white. So, I was always kind of picked on, growing up and stuff for that. But also just like, if you're respectful and like that's the whole thing about Hawaii is just having that respect and the culture just brings you in, and I was just accepted in by everyone, and I just respected the culture, respected everyone there. I mean, I was born and raised out there, so it's just like it's just a totally different way of life, and it's a community, you know what I mean? And it's once you're a part of that community, it's just like you're in, and it's like you have family. So it's like my Hanai family is like my second family basically, and it's just like I had friends that I would like just stay at their house all the time, and like everyone cooks you dinner, and it's just like a different way of life because it is a small town and you're on an island, and everyone kind of knows everyone. So it's definitely a great culture to be a part of. And it's kind of funny sometimes, even just after I moved here, Boise's great because everyone's super friendly and nice, but it is like still felt like a big city, and it is kind of a culture shock because I was used to being kind of like the minority, I guess, like one of the white people. But so it's kind of cool just I don't know, just like being a part of that culture and getting to still kind of represent that. And people freak out all the time when I tell them I'm from Hawaii, you know what I mean? So they're like, why would you ever move here? So
No, it's a valid question though. Some of us
for
that are born and raised in
sure.
Idaho are like, "What the frick?" But like, no,
Mhm.
it's cool. It's cool to hear that. When you're growing up over there, Dalton, did you have siblings or anything? Like, what got you into the sport of football? I guess, or was that kind of like your friends that you were around, the culture that you were around, that kind of got you into the sport of football?
Definitely my dad. He is a diehard. He's from Wisconsin, so he's a diehard Green Bay Packers fan. So how my family even got out to Hawaii was my dad sold timeshare, so that's how he got out there. But he just raised me. I just remember being a kid and literally Sundays were wake up, you know, start watching football because football starts early in Hawaii. So it was like breakfast football. I have a little sister, but it definitely was my dad who just started getting me into it. He got me into it when I was in second grade. I was playing flag football. So, and then tackle football started in third grade. So he was my coach, third, fourth, fifth grade. So he's the one who kind of got the ball rolling. Diehard Green Bay Packers fan. Literally, like on Sunday, he will not watch football. That's what he's doing all day.
No, that's awesome, man. So dad got you into the sport itself.
For
You
sure.
mentioned you were a preferred walk-on over at Boise State. So can you talk to me about that recruiting process? Did you always have aspirations to play next level? And what was it like as you were getting near the end of your high school career? Did you like the recruiting process? Was it frustrating? Was it what was expected? Kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, I think it's stressful for everyone. I mean, it's definitely a different experience than I've ever had. I mean, I set my goal though. I knew I wanted to play D1, and I knew I wasn't gonna, settle for anything less. So Boise State was honestly the only real D1, offer I got. So I kind of came out here. I had the opportunity to maybe walk on at, UH Manoa, or I could have gone to Oregon State, but I just, Boise State, I actually had our coach come out, recruit me, like meet with me and my family. And it just felt like all the stars aligned for me to get out there. I think honestly, just yeah, it was always a goal of mine when I was in high school to be D1. I was definitely undersized though. So I played O-line and I was left tackle, and I got put in that role just because I was like kind of a bigger kid, taller, but I was definitely lankier. So when I started going to camps, they're like, you have to be at least 280 pounds. At the time I was a junior, I was 220 pounds. So they're like, you got to be 280 to come play, D1 football basically. So I literally had been bulking since I was like junior in high school. Even honestly, freshman year of high school, I was only 180, and then
Wow.
just kept on gaining weight, gaining weight. By the time I got to Boise State, I came in as 280 pounds.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
mhm.
So yeah, I mean, a little bit of a growth spurt, but also just bulking. Like, yeah,
Just eating,
you had
eating
to
like
eat.
crazy.
You had to eat. So, I mean, that's the reality of that. And I actually kind of want to circle back to that here in a little while. But
Yeah.
did like eating, what was the eating like to be able to get up to that 280-pound mark when you might not naturally be there? What was that like for you? Did it seem like it was difficult for you? Some people have a hard time bulking, whereas for me, give me a weekend, I'll gain 12 pounds. I kid you not. Like that's not even a joke, dude. I can
No, yeah, for
do it.
sure.
It's wild, dude. But like, what was it like for you in high school trying to get to that mark? Where did you feel like you were eating a ton all the time, or was it hard for you or not?
Oh yeah, I got lucky. So my mom is a naturopathic doctor, so she actually deals with weight loss. So she actually was the one who got me like, okay, you need to be eating consistently. So she would like prep my meals and stuff for me. But I was also eating like mass gainer shakes, so I would have 3 mass gainer shakes a day, and these shakes were like 1,000 calories each. So I was pounding those like high protein, just basically just trying to eat whatever I could, because you're also burning a bunch of calories too, when you're playing sports and you're training and you're wanting to perform good too. So it's just a mix of all of that. But honestly, it was, yeah, sometimes it was hard. Like, I didn't really think of it. I just knew that I needed to eat, especially when I got to college, because then I got up to 315 was my heaviest. So I just knew always get seconds and your body kind of adapts to it. You know what I mean? So it was a process, after trying to lose weight too, of switching that mindset a little bit. So
And yeah, so we will circle back to that because
yeah.
that's just crazy to me. And you mentioned 315. Now, if you guys, I have it in the description of this podcast already, but if you guys follow Dalton on his social media channels, you're going to see he has a fitness page on Instagram to kind of follow his transformation journey for his health. He's not 315 anymore, and he's running half marathons and doing a lot of good things and lifting weights, and he's looking good. And so that's where I'm like, man, we'll talk about that in a second, because that's not an easy transition the other way. Once you've like kind of gotten into that routine, that habit for a couple of years, just trying to always just be big, to then cut and be small. It's that's not easy, but it's cool to see what you've done. I want to get to that in just a second. But Dalton, when you got over to Boise State, preferred walk on, you get over there. What was the first, I guess, practices like? What was it like when you finally got into a D1 school? You're over there. To my understanding, if I'm not mistaken, did you redshirt your freshman year?
Yep.
Yeah, you redshirted. So I want to ask, like, there's a lot of kids that are aspiring to play at the next level, and redshirting is kind of common these days. I mean, it happens. There's people that go the junior college route, and even then, when they get to the D1 route, they might even redshirt as a sophomore sometimes or something, because it's just how it is. It's development, right? But what
Mhm.
even when you got there, did you know, one, you were going to redshirt, but two, what were the practices like, and what was the biggest transition for you going from high school football in Hawaii to Division I football in Boise, Idaho?
Man, it honestly was a shock when I first got there. I came in with a bunch of senior guys, in the O-line room. I had like guys who went to the league. Ezra Cleveland is a good example of that, who plays in the league now. But they were just like, we had a senior O-line team. So all the O-linemen there were all seniors, and they had been playing together, for 4 years, 5 years actually. So it was literally, and we had John Molshon, he went to the league too. He played for Tampa Bay. Like, it was just a senior, unit there. So I came in as a freshman with kind of another group of guys who kind of were going to be the backups to that team. I came in with like 6 other freshmen on linemen, but it honestly just felt like, wow, this is a totally different game. You know what I mean? And like you can definitely see the difference from high school going into college. I mean, at least from where my high school was, like we were still a D2, Hawaii football team. We were the first. I was actually part of the first team that won state championship for Lion Luna, and it was just like it was kind of a shock at first, just like how much time you're spending every day, in not only on the field in the weight room, but also the fact of how much film you're studying. That's honestly the biggest difference that I had because we didn't really honestly go over film too much in high school. Like we would watch it by ourselves and like obviously having to make my own cut ups and stuff to try to get recruited. But other than that, we didn't really sit down and like study film as a team really. And it's just like completely different when you go into college. That's probably the majority of the time you're spending is how much film breakdown and time goes into actually watching that, studying film, and then also studying your opponents and everything like that. So that was honestly one of the biggest shocks. And honestly, just workouts, I'm sure Kamala or anybody would have mentioned, decks.
Yeah.
Everyone knows deck days, and everyone knows, when you get in as a freshman, they brought us in the middle of summer training, and it's the 5th of July. So everyone comes back from the 4th of July break, and then they're running decks, and you're a freshman watching these guys just sweating and just having the word like it's like the most intense conditioning you do. And so you're shocked right away. You're like, oh boy. So, but honestly, like I think that, having that backbone, I think any student athlete, who goes through that kind of sets them up good in life in general. And I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways I have from football and honestly Division I football. Even my time at Lahaina Luna, I was waking up early, going to weights. It just instills dedication, discipline in you that you can keep carrying on throughout your life. But definitely the film study and just the workouts and intensity of it and how much time you're actually in there, that was probably the biggest shock factor.
Man, I can imagine. So it wasn't just KC that told me about this, but Kekoa Nawahine, when he was on my show. So Kekoa was on my show talking about decks, and he had mentioned, Dalton, that like when he came in, he came home from a church mission, and then he was trying to prove himself as a freshman. Like he came in there, he's like, okay, I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna show him. And he said that was like one of the hardest things he's ever had to do, like was the decks. And so like you mentioned decks. I've heard it from KC. I've heard it from Chase Baker. I've heard it from Winston Venable. I've heard it from all these guys that I've had on the show. Talk to me about though, like, can you just, for those who might not have listened to those episodes and don't really want to go back and listen to them, what does that entail? What does running decks at Boise State's football stadium entail?
So those are the top stadium stairs. So basically you're running the bleachers, and one deck is you run all the way up and then you come all the way down. That's one. And basically what we would do, we would work our way up every week. So you start off with running probably like 6 decks. And then every week during the summer, you keep increasing until you get to 20. And usually on the 20 day, you get another one more. Okay, one more. So you're doing 22. And I mean, it's totally different. I mean, as an O lineman, like I was, you have guys who are 300 pounds and like the first ones go good, but like at the end, you have guys crawling or you have guys just, you're just struggling to make it up. So that's probably one of the most intense, workouts. And not to mention, when I was a freshman too, we would do drills before that. So you do conditioning drills before you even go in there, or you might even hit the weight room and do a lift before you even run decks. So yeah, it's
Dude,
intense for sure.
that's wild, man. Like that is absolutely crazy. Holy cow, dude. That just sounds miserable to me. Like Dalton, that just sounds miserable. And when I'm thinking about it is like, yeah, I'm sure it builds character, but even just like the running up sucks. But then like coming down when your knees are gone, your quads are toasted and everything, like, that's dangerous, dude. Trying to come down the stairs when you're already just done for. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
if you slip on the decks, you're gonna get some bruises and scrapes on your shins and stuff. I remember so it was probably the year. I'll dive into this a little bit, but it was after my freshman year. I tore my pec, so I tore that, and I was out for basically like 3 months. I was injured, or no, it was a 6 month period. So it was winter, and then I missed fall camp, and then I got thrown right back into my second year of summer conditioning in the decks, and I had basically been 280 pounds my freshman year, and my coach was like, just stay at that weight, like you don't really need to be that big. But I felt like I was still undersized, and everyone else was 300. I'm like, I'm gonna get to 300, so I got even heavier and then jumped into summer conditioning after I hadn't been running or anything. And that was probably the most humbling, summer conditioning I've ever felt, where I was just struggling on every conditioning day. But yeah, they humble you, and they'll definitely build some character for sure.
For frick's sake, that sounds miserable, man. Ah, geez, dude. It reminds me like when I was in high school, Dalton, like I was on the basketball court, we were training. I remember the wrestlers were upstairs running on the other gym that we had at our school. They were doing sprints and stuff. And I remember one day we were just practicing, we could hear them crying up there. Like dudes were crying, and then they were like right over the edge of the whatever it was, like to look down at our court. There was a trash can, and they were like be bawling, and then they're just ralphing all up in the trash can, and they're right back to sprinting. And I'm like, ew. And then like then they were running. They were like heavyweights too. There were some heavyweights, and they had to run stair laps. And all of us basketball players still had to run stair laps. Same concept, but they had to carry someone on their back. I remember some of the big boys that were doing that were just crying, dude. They were crying the whole way because they could only get like 2 or 3 feet. They'd have to stop, drop him off his back, put him back on, run 2 or 3 feet, and they're just like, and they have to go down the stairs, upstairs. It was a whole mess. That's what that reminds me of when you're talking about decks. It's like I remember the misery, just like being like, my gosh, I thought we were running a lot in basketball. Yeah, this is nothing. Like that was disgusting. Friggin' sucks. Now, when did you finally get to actually get into the rotation and get playing time? I wanted to ask you that question. In your career, what year did you actually get to start and get some valuable minutes at Boise State?
So I was always a backup center. So I actually got switched from guard to center, and then my senior year of college was when I got in as a special team. So I did extra point and field goal, and then obviously I would filter in if we were blowing somebody out. I got in a couple games my senior year and stuff, but other than starting on special teams, I was always kind of a backup. I never really became that full starter as a center. And it was like another thing where I had to check myself and realize that's also why I had the opportunity to play another 2 years, a COVID year and my red shirt. But after I graduated college, I was like, I don't really see I'm probably not going to go to the league. You kind of got to check yourself a little bit and be like, this wasn't meant for me. So what's the next step? What's the next goal? You know what I mean? So that was like what I needed to realize. I'm glad I realized that sooner rather than later. And it was probably the toughest decision, especially when your whole life has been a sport. You know what I mean? So that's probably one of the toughest things. But other than that, I at least got to travel my senior year, and started on field goal and got to run out whenever we scored a touchdown, or those big field goals. Sometimes that's even more nerve-wracking because you don't want to mess up, and that could be the game on the line. So that was at least I was grateful for that as a walk-on, being able to get to basically a starting role in that regard.
That's so awesome, man. And the reason I wanted to bring that, because I know the story as far as the rotation and being a backup, and I actually think that's commendable because you kept showing up and you had your opportunities on special teams. So what advice would you give, Dalton, for those who might not be? I mean, you're not some people. I think like today, these kids. I coach basketball at the high school level, and I see a lot of kids when they get to the next level, whether it be junior college or a different higher level 4-year university, they're impatient. So they're like, oh, if I'm not starting, I'm leaving. And they get this, like, they feel entitled and they stop showing up. Like they don't show up the same. So I would like to get your advice as someone who just kept showing up, regardless of what rotation you were in. What would you tell those kids? Like, what would you tell the aspiring athletes coming up? Because you were one of those. You kept putting your helmet on. You kept coming to work. You kept getting better, even though you were playing your role, right? How do you get people to buy in? How did you buy in when you weren't a starter?
Basically, you just have to, where you're planted is where you need to succeed, right? So you basically just have to kind of take a chip on your shoulder and be a little bit humble. It's like everyone wants to be the starter. Everyone, especially in football, you have that ego, and you can, like, there's times where I was really down on myself too and felt like, what am I even doing? Why am I even showing up? You can get in your own head, but it's honestly just being able to be grateful. And that's honestly what I've been able to do mostly now, of my new life and everything, is just be grateful for what I have and be grateful for where I'm at and just keep on doing it. I mean, if you put in the work, your work will be rewarded. I think that's the biggest thing. And it was rewarded by me being able to, if I would have just stopped or gave up, I would have never ended up traveling or being a key component to the team or anything like that. I mean, even though it is just like field goals, PAT, at least I was kept showing up and was able to perform in that role. You know what I mean? And at least coach up the young guys or like help out younger guys and just be a contributor, because I think honestly that's the biggest thing. If you're not, sometimes you're not going to be the best, just in terms of size, talent, or what have you, but it's also, are you going to let that stop you from showing up and giving it your all? Because that's honestly, at the end of the day, all you can do. So if you keep showing up, putting in the work, and giving it your all every single time, your work's going to be rewarded.
So awesome, dude. That's super cool. And I think you're downplaying the whole role on special teams. I think that's a vital piece, by the way. Extra points, field goals, that's a vital piece. So don't downplay that piece of it all. Like you were able to contribute on that. Traveling, you mentioned that a couple of times. I want to, pick your brain on, some of the best places you've been to, like as far as the stadiums you've played at and some of the most memorable experiences. Do you mind sharing some of those with us?
Yeah, I think UCF was probably one of the most memorable just because it was down in Florida. That one was cool just to go experience that. Go to Orlando. I had never been down south or like to Florida before, so that was cool.
Quick question on that. That was the
Yeah,
delayed game, right? So it started way, way late, if I remember.
yeah,
Wasn't it a rain delay? So
yeah.
do you remember that at all as a player? Because as a guy back in Idaho, I'm like, dude, this is taking so long. So we were so tired waiting for
Oh
it to
yeah,
go. It didn't get over till like what, 1 a.m. It felt like, and I don't know,
oh
it was
yeah.
like really late. So
And we flew back home, I think so we didn't get back to Boise till like, it was ridiculous. It was like 5 a.m. or something crazy, but I don't even remember because I think we had to fly back that night. But yeah, so any rain delay. Also, when we had my first bowl game was down in Texas, the First Responders Bowl. So
oh, you
that's
were there
when
for
the
that.
real delay. Yeah, that was terrible. So we had a lightning delay, and you're just sitting in the locker room. So when I was at UCF, that was that was going through my head. I'm like, is this going to be another, First Responders Bowl where the game just gets completely canceled after we've been sitting here for, 4 hours in this locker room wondering if we're going to play? So it is, yeah, it's not fun for anybody. Trust me. The players are not excited to just, after you get all hyped up and you're ready to go and it's game time, and then they're like, oh yeah, time to sit for 2 hours and just, try to stretch out and try to like keep the energy up. But yeah, it's not fun when those types of things happen, for sure.
Oh, that's funny. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off when you were talking, but I
No,
just remember
no.
a UCF game, and then I didn't realize you were part of the First Responders Bowl that got canceled. That was a
Yeah.
disaster. Oh my
That
gosh.
was the first bowl game that got canceled since Pearl Harbor. So I mean, it was rough for that too.
So
Um,
brutal. Okay, what's some other stadiums you went to that you really enjoyed or the most memorable moments?
so I would BYU was a really cool experience just because it felt like that was a real rivalry game that I was a part of there, because we had gotten beaten by Zach Wilson the year prior, and like going to BYU was pretty insane. I don't know if it was a year prior, but it was pretty recently. Felt like it was a big rivalry game for us, and the stadium honestly was just huge, and just the crowd in general was crazy. And then Fresno was pretty big because we went there and you just have grown men barking at you when you're walking out of the locker room down the tunnel, and they're barking. And then there was like probably, 4 fights that broke out in the stands between Fresno and Fresno fans. And we had guys rolling down onto the sidelines and like police trying to, it was honestly like a crazy atmosphere there, and we killed them. So it was like 40 something to 20 or something like that. I don't remember the exact score, but so that was an interesting experience. So that was probably like my most memorable experiences when I got to travel to those games.
Dude, you're not the first one to bring up Fresno. Kyle Brotzman, former kicker for Boise State, actually talked to me about that. And he said Fresno, like the things that people were saying to him when he was walking out onto the field, he's like, man, this is crazy.
Oh
The
yeah,
things that are being said to you over there. Fresno is wild, man.
they're intense fans for sure.
That's funny. Hey, so Dalton, in your experiences playing at Boise State, I mean, under different coaching staffs and so forth, just the differences that you had over there, like with just leadership, I guess, who's a leader that stands out to you in a positive way, and what's something that they taught you that you can take, off the field?
That's a good one. I mean, there's a lot of, leaders that I had throughout my time playing. When I was playing too, I think I really looked up to like when I was a freshman, David Moa was big. He was like one of the, best D line. I actually went against him all the time because I was scout team when he was in his senior year too. Or yeah, I think he was a senior when I was a freshman. So he was a big time influence, and he just like led by example. Also, John Molshon was like a leader in my O line room for sure. When I'm thinking back when I was a freshman too, and just seeing the guys who just consistently go and like are able to perform, but also perform in the classroom, perform, off the field, just in life in general, and just lead by example and just be a good example to everyone around them. And also everyone who has integrity, like they are always doing the right thing. And they also are trying to lead and doing their best to lead and also hold guys accountable when they're messing up or, they're trying to help other guys come along with them. I think that's probably what makes like the biggest leader is someone who's able to not have the ego, even if they are a great player, not have the ego and like try to help guys along with them and just, are humble and respect everyone too. I think that's what really is the quality of good leadership right there.
Totally, man. That's awesome. Shout out to those guys too for setting the
Shout out.
example.
Hmm.
One of the things, Dalton, being around this area for as long as I've been born and raised in Boise, the Treasure Valley, I should say. So I grew up watching Boise State. I've seen them when they were terrible. I was there during the rise. Graduated from Boise State. I'm a huge Buckeyes fan too, which is surprising. I know it's a weird mix. They call me the Boise Buckeye online, but I love Boise State though, right? Like I'm a massive fan. I've seen the hockey stick growth. I've seen it taper down, kind of come back up. One of the biggest things is we hear it a lot from other fan bases that, Boise State can't hang with the big dogs. It's a small time program. The stadium's 36,000 people. It's tiny, right? And, I've been to other games. Like literally, I just went to Autzen for Ohio State, Oregon just a couple weeks back to watch top 5 matchup over there. I mean, it is a different atmosphere when you got big time football programs playing each other compared to like small time programs, like a smaller program. However, it's always interesting to me when I see I go to an Ohio State game with 105,000 people in the stands, and I go to a Boise State game right like the next week and it's 36,000. I'm like, oh my gosh, like there is a little bit of deflation, but at the same point, it's kind of cool to me, just the whole overall experience, so to speak, right? So like, I want to know what your experience is having been to different stadiums and what you would have to say about like the Boise State culture, because I'm like, there is an intimate setting in that stadium of 36,000 people and the blue turf and the blue collar mentality. And yeah, we might not have 5-star athletes across the board, but they play together and they compete. You know what I mean? There's something special about it. So I would like to know your thoughts having played for the program.
I really love just what you said about our fan base, honestly, and just the Boise State fans in general are just diehard and they love their team and they'll go travel, they'll represent in any place too. Like I actually traveled to Oregon for the Boise State Oregon game this season, so it was cool going up there and just seeing how much fans actually were representing and made the drive up there. But like you said, I think that blue collar mentality and just having that throughout, that was one of my biggest things that I related to, when I played for Boise State. And just, we don't have to have 5 stars across the board. We don't have to have, all this, all the glamour, all that. We're just going to go do the work. And, we're going to, even though we don't all have all that, we're still going to be one of the best teams out there, ranked now. And like just seeing like what our potential could be. I think there's so much that, what we have to offer. And I think, sometimes it's good to be the underdog and not be, on everyone's radar and just be silent, fly under the radar, and then, go win. So I actually really like how, tight knit our fan base is, even though it isn't, 100,000 people in the stands. It feels like a great environment every time. And, they sell out every time too. So it was record breaking for the Washington State game I was at too, record breaking attendance. So everyone there is there to watch Boise State win. I'll tell you that.
I love that, man. Shout
Mhm.
out to Jeremiah Dickey, athletic director over there too. I feel like he's done a really good job with this program since he took over. I had him on the show a couple months back and just kind of learning his thoughts as an athletic director coming from bigger schools. And I think he's done a really good job at trying to improve what he can improve with the budget that they have. One of the biggest things that I've noticed, Dalton, is that Boise State's budget as compared to like other schools, it's not even on the same universe. So the fact that they've been able to even do what they've done, with as little of revenue as they have, comparatively speaking, to like, I'm just going to use Ohio State as an example because that's a school I cheer for, but there's other schools out there, Oregon, the BYU's. I mean, there's some massive revenue streams. I think people think that we're on the same playing field that way. It's not even close, dude. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars as compared to not like, I mean, 50 million or whatever. That's a big
Mhm.
difference when you're trying to expand a stadium, build new facilities and all sorts of things. Like, we just don't have all of that ourselves. And that's okay. I think what we've done and what we've been able to accomplish given the circumstances is actually quite remarkable, to be honest. And our school is relatively young in the sense of being a Division I school when it comes to the program and whatnot. I mean, comparatively speaking to some big programs as well. So anyway, I just have a lot, like I have a lot of respect for what we've been able to do with what we have here. And like you said, the fan base does what they do. When we went out to Virginia Tech back in 2010, traveled out to Baltimore for that game, and well, it was Washington D.C., but we were out there, and man, I'll tell you, man, we brought a handful. I mean, it was close to 7,000 to 10,000 people from Boise made the trip out to Washington D.C. So they travel, man. Bronco Nation
Yeah.
goes places. So one thing I want to ask you, Dalton, before we get to your post career, and I know I don't want to like overdo the talk on the Boise State stuff, but it's important to me to ask because one time I was at a Nebraska Ohio State game, and Ohio State ran them off the field. We were in Nebraska for that one. I was walking down at the end of the game to go into the tunnel and stuff, and I was walking in there, and there's some linemen from Nebraska, and I mean their line gave up like 10 sacks. It was they were getting beat because Chase Young, who's now in the NFL, was just running through them. Okay. And I watched Chase Young walk into the locker room. Like, I watched him walk right by me. Dude's like 6'5", 6'6", like 260, 280. Like, he's a monster, and he's ripped, mind you. He had his crop top thing on, massive defensive end. And then I walked into the tunnel, and I'm like watching all these Nebraska linemen talking to their parents. And I'm like, oh, dude, these guys are smaller than me. Like, these are dudes who are like 260 to 280 pounds, white boys like me who are like 6'1", 6'2". And I was like, oh, no wonder. Like, that sucks. They had to block that dude. So like, that's just what I thought in my head. I'm like, dang, no wonder that was tough for him. I'm just curious. That's in my head. I was like, oh, dude, that would suck. Did you ever like play a team where you saw somebody on the defensive side of the ball that you were like, holy cow, that's like that's a different style athlete? Was there any experiences like that for you during your time at Boise State?
Um, you know, I mean, there's a handful of experiences like that. I would say probably like what comes to mind when you say a different type of athlete was actually at that First Responders Bowl game, and we played against Boston College, and it was AJ Dillon, and he was their starting running back, and it was just insane watching him play at his caliber. And like, I'm a Packers fan, so obviously I know him, and have watched him in the league. Even though I don't think he's with the Packers anymore, but um, just what like that was probably what comes to mind when I see a different type of athlete, just go crazy. Also, I have to shout out like Khalil Shakir, like watching him from since he was a freshman, just how he plays, and like you just kind of know when people are going to go to the league. I have to say, like, I knew right away, like everyone kind of knew, like that guy's going to the NFL, like just how he plays, how he's able to go up, catch the ball with, like one hand, like just do some crazy athleticism like that. You kind of knew right away he's gonna go to the next level. So I have to shout him out for sure because that's also an example of just someone who, you just know right away, just a different type of player caliber.
It's funny you mentioned him. I'm a Blitnikoff Award voter, so I vote for the best wide receiver in college football. And obviously, being from Boise, he was on the list. He was one of the finalists for the Blitnikoff Award. I was so freaking pissed during that process because he was not getting the love that he deserved. And everyone's like,
Mhm.
oh, he plays for Boise State. All of a sudden, I'm like, you have no freaking clue how good this dude is. I don't care what school he plays. You can tell, like you just said it, you can tell when someone's built for the league. And that dude was putting up numbers. I mean, I was fighting for him to win that. Like every week I'm voting and I'm giving insights because everyone just it didn't give him the love he deserved. He was balling out. Speaking of that UCF game, I mean, the first half at least of that game, Shakir's just like I mean, single-handedly destroying that team. So anyway, that dude's a monstrous athlete. That's so cool, man. So Dalton, you had referenced earlier when you had to, you had to be realistic with yourself, a little bit of self-awareness, and you said check yourself a little bit, kind of saying, okay, what's the future hold for me? So you made the decision to move on from football when school was done. You graduated, you did your thing. When you left, what was the transition? We talked about your transition from high school football to Division I football, but what was the transition like playing football to going in now into the quote unquote real world to get a profession, like a professional career and whatnot?
Yeah, it was honestly like it was intense. It's one of the biggest changes you have, and I think it was a good time for me to like kind of come into my own and kind of figure out, okay, football's over. Who's Dalton? You know what I mean? Like, what am I gonna do? And I honestly, you kind of mentioned already like how much I've been getting into fitness and health and stuff. But honestly, right when I got done with football, that's when I probably like didn't care the most. I'm like, oh, I'm finally done. I don't have to work out anymore. I don't have to do this. So I like took a good like 3 months of just not really caring, about health and everything like that. But like you said, we both work at the same place, Bishop's RV. That was like I got into their AMP program, advanced management program, and it's honestly been amazing to experience that and just get into a career world. And like I said, if you just have I feel like everyone has that instilled in them who's been a college athlete or played at a high level or been a student athlete. You want to get there early. You want to get there before everyone else. You never want to be late. You want to work hard, especially in sales, which what I was in. Now I'm a sales manager, but when I was in sales, it was like I wanted to compete with everyone. I wanted to be, in the top of the leaderboard and everything like that. So it translated well into the route that I ended up going in, and I'm, grateful for where I'm at now in terms of being able to be elevated and being in my you know career position right now. But I honestly think like that's something that I'm grateful for football. Obviously for allowing me to continue with that discipline in terms of applying that to my professional career too.
I think that's so cool, man. This is what I initially, if you flash back 2017 when I started this podcast, I was a senior at Boise State. I didn't graduate till I was freaking 28 years old, so I was a older senior over there. But like I was finishing up my degree finally. Had Bob Beeler, who's the voice of the Broncos, told me to start a podcast, so I did. So 2017, I start this, and part of the reason I wanted to start a podcast is one, nobody was doing it yet. Now everyone's got a podcast, but at the time, like it was not so common. And I'd heard a couple of my own podcasts that I'd listened to, and I felt like, man, there's not a lot of people doing this. I wanted to share people's stories because, Dalton, I always was of the opinion that, like, you have the athletes typically have the stigma of like, oh, they're these dumb jocks. That's what my sister used to call us. Oh, they're a bunch of dumb jocks. They're just dumb. They just play sports, nothing. I'm like, no, dude, they actually learn so many life skills through athletics that they can transfer to their regular lives if they do it right. Like the right ones will figure it out. You just said exactly why, like, I started this show is to kind of highlight that, right? Like you learn a lot of skills, you go through adversity, you show up to work, you do the things, you keep putting in the work, and you can figure that out. Like in the real world, you were able to do that. Talking about like adversity in the sales world. Now, you were a sales guy, selling RVs. Talk to us about some of the, like, I guess, the adversity that you faced there in the real world. So somebody can, like, if we're talking about adversity, in the football world, go through ups and downs, wins and losses. You might not be a starter, whatever. But in the sales world, what are some of the stresses you've gone through, the adversity that you've gone through there?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who's been in sales kind of understands, you're going to have your high points, you're going to have your low points, and those low points you can get in your head and you can allow that to deter you from reaching those high points again. Or you can write it out and, you can just, it's honestly just having that mental check with yourself of, what am I doing to help myself increase? It's just, I relate it all to fitness and health and, just what are you doing right now to get your next sale? You know what I mean? What am I doing right now to progress myself? What am I doing? Am I slacking off? Am I not disciplined in this one area? Is that what is hindering me from achieving another sale? So I definitely think like, sometimes you can get in your head just in general, but it's honestly just a different thing. And honestly, sales, at least for our industry and stuff, it's honestly just being someone's friend. And I think like that's been my best skill that I've gotten out of this. It's I'm able to go and, just talk to anybody, like sometimes I have friends who like make fun of me, like, cause I'll just strike up a conversation with someone in an elevator, or like just say something. And that's like what sales is. It's like you have to be friendly and be able to talk to just about anybody. And that's like what I'm grateful for sales doing, is like helping me be just more of an extrovert and just be more of a talkative, person in that regard too. So,
I freaking love that, man. I love it. That's
mhm.
so cool. So cool to see how it kind of transfers over. And obviously it's done well for you. I mean, you do well with what you do because you're now a sales manager in your career, and that's freaking awesome. We talked about your fitness, right? Earlier, we talked about how you had to bulk in high school, get up to 280. You got up to 315 pounds at one point in your career. After college playing days were over, you took a couple of months off of even working out. But now, as we referenced earlier, I mean, fitness is a big piece of your life, big part of your journey. Can you talk to us about why you made the change to really take care of your body and lose the weight that you've lost? And we'll talk about the weight loss journey that you're on, and what you decided to do and why you decided to do it to get back in shape.
Yeah, I mean, so honestly, after some time, out of college, and I just realized like, I started losing weight, but then I plateaued at around like 250 pounds. So I went from 315 to 250, and that's honestly just, you're not stuffing your face anymore because, you're not playing football. But then I really like took it upon myself, and it's honestly just changing your lifestyle. And it doesn't start from, going and killing yourself in the gym for 2 hours, one time. If you're honestly truly trying to make that change and change your lifestyle from going from, because honestly, I was, obese, and, no one wants to be that big. You want to look good, you want to feel good. So it's just those small changes that over time, those small habits just keep compounding, and it's compound interest. And it's just like the more you're able to make those small transitions, the easier it is to just make that part of your lifestyle. So I just started with, going to the gym for 30 minutes, once a night. And it was like maybe 4 times a week, when I first started rolling. And then, it just turned into a habit. Okay, I'm going to go to the gym. Okay, now it's early mornings. Okay, now I'm going to wake up early. Okay, if I wake up early, now I got to go to bed early. So then I started going to bed earlier. Okay, so I'm doing all this work in the gym. So how do I get to where I want to be? Oh, I got to eat right. I got to lock in on my nutrition. I got to meal prep. Okay, I'm meal prepping. So it's just like, it turns into a lifestyle after you start making those small changes. But honestly, for anyone who's like wanting to lose weight or like wanting to get started on their fitness journey, don't feel like you need to go, crazy just right off the bat. It takes time, and nothing good ever happens overnight. You know what I mean? Nothing that is rewarding and fulfilling happens instantly. It's going to take some time, and you honestly just have to put your head down, keep chopping wood, and pretty soon you're going to have what you want. So you're going to have the goals that you want.
It's pretty commendable, man. Like, I want to ask you though, as a former offensive lineman, I mean, you put a lot of wear and tear on your body. Did you ever notice that like that was hurting your joints or anything? And did you have any, like, tore your pec, but any kind of injuries that you experienced that were kind of hindering you from, like, when you started to lose weight, you started to realize like, man, this is like taking pressure off my joints. This feels really good to be back in shape, kind of thing?
Oh yeah, it made like it's crazy. So when you start losing weight and everything, your joints just feel so much better. Your body feels better. You're not carrying around a bunch of weight on you. You look better. You feel better. I started locking in my diet a lot better. So, just eating cleaner and eating good food and healthy food for you just makes you feel so much better. It gives you more energy. You're able to just like perform at a higher level too when you're focusing on your nutrition. I think that was honestly one of the biggest impacts that just completely changed was, actually dialing in on what I'm eating and my nutrition, eating the right amount of protein, carbs, and just dialing that in, calories. And honestly, like, it was a struggle at first when I started doing that, because obviously I wanted to cut down weight, and then I got down to, where I want to be. And now it's like a struggle. I feel like anyone who loses a lot of weight can relate to the struggle of allowing themselves to eat food again, allowing themselves to start eating, more food again, or like eating, what you need to, perform at a high level. And that's why I think it's like, especially from running these marathons and everything, it's allowed me to like have a healthier relationship with food again, where I'm not like afraid to eat, because I think it's definitely a mental thing too. When you can get it, I'm kind of going off topic, but like it's definitely a mental thing in that regard when you can get in your head about, I'm not going to eat because that's going to make me fat. No, you're working out, you're getting after it. You got to make sure you're eating good, healthy, nutritious food, but you allow yourself to eat. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that was like the other thing that I struggled with too after I had lost weight, and then so I did relearn, that it's okay to eat. I guess.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, you went from being able to eat pretty much whatever you wanted for a number of years, because you're trying to keep it, and then you had to rewire your brain to like cut that out completely, go the opposite direction. And then once you get to your goal, it's like, oh, well, can I eat again? Like you're scared to almost open that up because you almost feel like you're going to open the floodgates. Do I have enough discipline to not
Yeah.
go off the rails? And that's what I've always struggled with myself. Dalton, is like, when I lose like a certain amount of weight, I go down from 260 to 220. A healthy weight for me is about 215. But sometimes, man, I'll be like, if I start eating, it just feels like I gained 5 pounds this weekend of sodium because I ate like a cow. Well, now it just starts. I have a mental problem with that. It's crazy what you said. I totally relate. But I think it's cool that you're sharing this because it's super important for us to know you can control it. One thing that I learned in one of my previous jobs, I worked at a company called bodybuilding.com for 6.5 years. And we were there. One of these guys came in and said, one of the very few things that you actually have control over in this world, you don't have control over many things. Like some stuff you have no control over, but the one thing you do is your body composition, because you can control, like you say, hey, I want to get to X amount of weight. I know there's a mathematical formula of how to do that. Calories in versus calories out, types of food you can eat. That's literally one of the only things you can control in this world is your body comp. And I was like, man, that's actually a good point. I've always kept that in my mind. Like that is one of the few things in this world we can control fully is our body composition. Now, you mentioned running a couple of half marathons. I brought that up earlier as well. Long distance running, man, like going from playing football, short bursts of plays, to now you're doing long distance running, my guy. Like it's not easy. I understand it, having like gone into this world myself. What got you into long distance running? Why do you feel like an addiction for that too? Because you've ran 4 half marathons in the most recent couple months, right?
So yeah, I mean, I would have never. So my thing was the gym and lifting weights, and I enjoyed that, and I had never thought that I would get into running. I have to shout out Jet Taylor. She is Tyler Crow's girlfriend. Tyler Crow plays for the team right now, one of my good buddies. But always saw her posting about she's running marathons and stuff, and I started getting into like the whole hybrid athlete, influencer thing. I mean, with Nick Bear and Bear Performance Nutrition. I'm wearing their shirt right now, but literally like watching them and like learning about the whole hybrid thing. I'm like, oh, I'm kind of interested in this. And then I was actually in church, and my church put on, it's a fundraising, it's called 52-4. And that's what I signed up for. So I had never really been running. Like, honestly, I'd never gone out and been like, oh, I'm going to go run a couple miles. You know what I mean? And then I just honestly felt motivated. Like I felt like this is a perfect opportunity for me to get started running if I have like something to actually start running for. So I'm like, I don't want to, run these 4 half marathons. So it's 4 half marathons in a 5-week period. So you're running back to back. And I'm like, I'm not going to go out and like just completely die at these half marathons. And I want to actually run them fully to completion and everything. So I went out and signed up for that, like got approved time off for it, like requested time off. And then I just started training, and it just started with me running, a couple miles, and then a couple miles turns into 3 and then 4. And then it turned into, 5, then 10, then 13.1. That's a half marathon. So I honestly just like, I love running because it's that same thing. It just gave me a new thing to get better at. And like you see the progress a lot faster, I feel like, especially when you start building that endurance up. You just see your pace start going down, you see the miles go up, and it's like easier for me to go out. Like I could go out and run 2 miles right now and just be fine. When in the past it was like, even though I was in shape lifting and everything, endurance is a totally different shape. And I honestly feel like having both really is what health is, having that both sides of the spectrum, lifting and running.
I feel you, dude. Literally this morning, Dalton, I got up and I was like, I only had time to go run a 5K, right? And I was like,
Mhm.
back in the day, if you would have flashed forward or flashed back 5 years even from now, like high school, college days, the idea of running 3 miles, and no, it didn't exist, right? But like once you start running longer distances, I'm like, oh, less than a half hour, I can go run, whatever it is, what it is. Like it's like, and it feels kind of cool because you do get to feel those wins. I think that's cool. I relate to you a lot on that. Now, I did not do 4 half marathons in 5 weeks. I want to do that. It's actually really cool that you guys put that on. I've done a couple of half marathons. I've actually ended up in the hospital after one of those last year,
Oh,
so it
dang.
sucked. Yeah, let me tell y'all something. If you're ever exactly what you just said though, I pre- I practice. I train for it. I'd run multiple 10+ milers. I get to my half marathon last year, Dalton. I was running it down by Lucky Peak, and right at the last second, I literally I had a water belt that I used to use. I have electrolytes and water in each one of my things.
Yep.
My buddy, bless his soul, but he told me, he goes, "Oh, dude, they'll have plenty of water stations over there. You don't need a water belt. It's going to weigh you down." And at the very last second, I went and threw it back in my car. I'd been training for months with this thing. So I chose not to bring a water belt. Well, for me, I sweat a lot. I can lose 10 to 12 pounds easy in a half marathon. That's just how I am. So I lose
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
of water weight. I've always been that way. And lo and behold, I mean, I only had they've got it every 2 to 3 miles, but that's not enough for me. And it's just like a quick swig. I need to have my electrolytes in there. So anyway, I crossed the finish line. I made it right at my 2 hour mark. I wanted to get under 2 hours, made it, collapse. My heart rate was at 202 beats per minute,
Oh
and
my gosh.
I couldn't walk. I couldn't get my legs to work anymore. They had to transport me in the hospital, like in the ambulance. Dude, biggest, the worst, most expensive experience of my life, dude. I was like, this is the stupidest thing ever. Just for a little nice little plastic metal thing that they had. So this year when I did the Get Fit, or it's not the Fit one, not Get Fit,
Good one.
Fit one, I made sure I had everything ready to go. I did my thing. And
Yeah,
made sure I didn't end up in the hospital afterwards. You got to be careful when you're running those things. It tests you to your limits, man. So,
I know.
uh,
Fit one was the most exciting. So that was one that we did out of the four. So that was the most exciting one for me, just with how many people were out there. And that was my best time. I think I got like an hour, 50. I want to say 52 or something like that. So hour
crazy.
52. So I
Tell me
was
this.
super happy with that.
For those who haven't ran a half marathon before, the Fit one is in Boise, Boise, Idaho. You basically just run all around downtown Boise. It's like around the area, right? And then you end up in
Hmm.
the park. But there is what they call Depot Hill, which is over by the train depot, and it's about the 8.5, 9 mile mark. I was not prepared for that. I think I talked to you about this in Indiana. Talk to us about when you hit the Depot Hill, because people don't realize. I'm like, dude, that's where I actually passed a ton of people because they were walking. I had grown men that were like in really good shape that were just walking it because
Yeah.
they couldn't run. It's like a 1 mile climb at a 4% grade. Like, I mean, it's a pretty steep climb, at least in my opinion. Did you experience the same thing I did? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that definitely. I mean, I had someone running with me. Like I had my buddy Thad, who we ran this one kind of together, like we were pacing each other. So it was good to have someone with me. And my goal, every time that I was running these half marathons, I was like, I'm not stopping. Like I know once I stop, you're not gonna keep going. So it was just, head down, climb that hill, and just keep going. It was like no talking, just get up it. But yeah, I mean, there's something to be said, and that's what life is. Sometimes you're at mile 8, mile 9, and then all of a sudden there's a hill in front of you, and you got to climb that hill. And then guess what? There's a downhill too, and you get to ride that out, and it's easier to hit the stride on the downhill, right? But I think that's why also I love running, and you can relate it to life and just like everything that goes on in your life too. So
So true, man. So freaking true. Well, Dalton, as we get near the end of the interview, I do want to touch base on something here. I ask people this all the time. Regardless of their faith, I like to ask like how that plays a role in their life as an athlete. You are a Christian, and I want to know what it's like to be a Christian athlete. What that role plays as a believer in Christ. How that's helped you in your life, and whether it be football, work, running, whatever. What's it like being a Christian, and how does that influence your life?
yeah, it's it's living for God, and that's what I say. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, and I give all glory to Him, obviously, for allowing me to just have the body that I have, and being able to have this passion for fitness and health, and you know, blessing me with everything that I have right now, and the job that I have, and I just give everything to Him, and I think and I'm just grateful for having that in my life, and I honestly am kind of a newer Christian too. I didn't I wasn't really saved until 2023. So I got baptized this summer, and just kind of like, you know, fully gave my life, I guess, and just like kind of have this new. I feel like I always kind of knew God, and like I honestly wouldn't have said I'm very religious before because I never grew up religious or anything. But honestly, when you actually, find the Lord and seek Him out and you open your heart to Him, and your life just changes, and you honestly have a heart change too. And I completely see life so much differently than before when I wasn't a believer. So I think honestly, just if that speaks to anything, just it's never too late for you to find that in your life. And I think we all have kind of a hole in ourselves, and only Jesus can fill that hole.
I respect that so much, man. I appreciate you sharing that too. I think that's super important and being willing to share that. That's awesome. I think it plays a role in your life, right? And it might not have been until 2023 that you were, fully converted and you found him. But I think that's so cool. It's so important for people to understand that can play. And I love what you said, Dalton. I don't care what people believe. I just want to share with you guys, like, something that you said there was like, when you said you start to see the world a little bit differently, right? Like, you start to see the world differently when you've opened your heart and started to seek him. I think that's an important piece. I'm not here to preach to everybody, but I do think that's an important piece of your story, and I wanted you to share it. And I think it's awesome. So shout out. That's freaking awesome.
And it's honestly, my life has changed because of it, and it's changed only for the better. And it's just almost indescribable, the feeling that you get when it happens. And I feel like anyone who's gone through that, where they, weren't a believer and now are a believer, like, you completely have a different heart, and a different way to see the world. And it just makes everything so much more meaningful, and everything you do and the way you talk and interact with people. And, praise God. So that's all I got to say on it. Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So Dalton, what's next in your life? We learned about your experiences, everything up until now, your profession, your running, your fitness. By the way, I will remind everybody, check the description. We have the links to his Instagram pages, especially his fitness one, so you can follow his journey that we were just chatting about. But what's next? If you could look down the road, like, what's next for Dalton Lins? Like, what should we expect to see from you in the next couple of years?
Sure. I mean, I'm kind of addicted to this running thing, so I'm gonna keep doing that. I'm honestly planning on running a marathon. So I've done a few halves already, so it's time to do a full one, right? So I want to set up for a full marathon. I'm planning actually May. There's a couple that I'm looking at. There's the Boise Marathon, so the Idaho Potato, that I'm kind of thinking about right now, and then also there's another one for Andrew Walker, rest in peace. He's up in Coeur d'Alene. So I had a few of my friends run that last year. He actually worked for Boise State. He was like a buddy of mine, and he passed away while he was running, actually, too, in a race, in a marathon, I believe. And it's so they put one on up there. It's kind of like in memoriam. It's a CDA marathon, but like they all ran it last year in memoriam of him. At least a lot of my friends, and so I'm kind of thinking about doing that one too. So I definitely a full marathon is in the cards for me, and then just keep lifting, running, and eating good and healthy, and just keep doing what I'm doing. I mean, that's all I can do.
Yes, sir, man. Hey, maybe you and I can run a race together one day. I don't know. Like, I want to do Roby Creek one time. We'll see.
I've heard that one's crazy, so yeah, I'm down for that.
Hey, it's in April, so maybe I'll be in preparation for one of your full marathons. I keep telling people, Dalton, I've been running for 4 years now. I don't know. I've done like a handful of half marathons. I just don't. The amount of training to do a full right now, like, you got to be able, like, towards the last couple of weeks of that, you got to be putting in 3 hours a day sometimes of running. And like, that's just, I don't know, man, that's hard to get the training done, but it's not impossible. And I'm going to be kind of keeping an eye on you. Maybe you'll be my motivation for that, because everyone keeps asking me, when are you going to do a full? I'm like, I don't know, man. Every time I do a half, like, my body's kind of broken for a day. So I don't know. Like,
right.
We'll see what happens.
I think I got to do the same thing that I did with these and just sign up. You know what I mean? Or else I'm not going to do the training. So
once you pay for it, you're in on it, right? Like,
exactly.
You're like, well, might as well get our money's worth. I love it, dude. Heck yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you joining the show, Dalton, being willing to share your time with us today. For all those who are listening, please hit the subscribe button or follow us on YouTube, wherever you're at, because we'll be coming to you every week with different episodes. But I hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review and let us know what you thought of the conversation with Dalton. And like I said, we'll be coming to you next week with another interview. Take care. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review, it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.